this is Maria Williams. In this video I will show you how I created this pop-up card using mainly supplies from the November 2016 Paper Pumpkin Kit. Even if you didn't get this kit, you might want to watch the video to see how easy it is to make a pop-up card. Here are the supplies I'm going to be using from the kit. I'm going to use a vellum piece, the 3 slope pieces that are meant to be mounted onto each other with dimensionals, one of the card bases, the twine that has a little bit of silver metallic thread running through it, the glue dots, and the stamp set. This is such a cute little stamp set. And I'm also going to be using a piece of Pool Party cardstock that I'm going to use to cut the little supports for the pop-up. The ink colors that coordinate with the kit that I'm going to be using today are Pear Pizzazz, Soft Sky, Pool Party, and Dapper Denim. In the kit, you get 2 ink spots, and those are Pear Pizzazz and Dapper Denim. So I'm going to use my own Soft Sky and Pool Party. I'm going to start with the outside of my card, and I'm taking the Soft Sky ink and the little snowflake stamp from the set and just randomly stamping a few times on the front of the card. The center area is going to be completely covered, but I went ahead and stamped the whole thing anyway, and I made sure that I was stamping some of the snowflakes close to the edges, since that's the area that will show. Once I'm done stamping the outside, I'm going to stamp the inside, but I'm only going to stamp the top half and not quite the whole top half, but the part that will show after I put the slope pieces on. And then last but not least, I'm going to stamp the white sloped piece that is going to go on the front once the pop-up is done. I'm done with the snowflakes now, so I'm going to take the Pear Pizzazz ink and stamp the trees. There are 2 stamps that fit over these trees. This is the larger one of the 2, and then I'm going to take the smaller one and just stamp it over the trees. I was having a little bit of trouble seeing the white outline of the trees on my grid paper, so I decided to take the scrap piece of Pool Party cardstock that I'm going to be using later and just place it underneath so that I could see them better and get a better stamped image. I'm going to continue working on the front of my card. So I have the Stitched Shapes frameless dies. I'm going to use the second largest oval. As you can see, this set has circles and squares. I've really enjoyed this set. And I'm just using my regular cutting sandwich. I'm using my magnetic plate, which I wouldn't need to use for this since it's just a simple oval out of a piece of white cardstock. And here's a close-up of that die cut. I love the way these stitch lines cut. And I'm going to cut the same shape out of a scrap piece of Pool Party that I'm going to layer underneath the white piece. On this white panel, I'm going to stamp the trees in Pear Pizzazz. I'm only going to use the larger tree stamp, and I'm going to stamp that pretty close to one of the edges. Then I'm going to stamp the small house in Pool Party close to the other edge. And then I'm going to stamp the large house in Dapper Denim. And to make this look like a cohesive grouping, I'm going to overlap the other 2 images. The same thing goes for the sentiment. I'm stamping it in Dapper Denim as well, and it's going to overlap some of the other images. I've grabbed my Pool Party stitched oval, and to get it lined up properly, I have placed my stamp panel underneath the vellum and then placed the vellum on top of it so I get a good idea for where I want that to go. I'm just using some snail adhesive to attach that to the vellum, and then I'm taking the stamped oval and just placing that on top of the Pool Party oval. And I could have used dimensionals here, but because there's going to be a fair amount of bulk on the inside of my card, I'm just attaching it with snail, so there's no more dimension added. Sorry, I went out of frame here. I was just lining up my vellum with the ruler on the bottom of my grid so that I could get it centered really well. So once I've done that, I decided it still wasn't quite centered, and because I used snail and I didn't press too hard, I was able to lift it up and put it back down. Now I'm simply wrapping a piece of the twine around the vellum panel, tying a knot and then a bow. And then I'm going to use one of the glue dots from the kit to secure it in the back. It's time now to work on the inside, so I have grabbed the 3 sloped pieces. I'm going to attach the one that's going to go in the back directly onto the card with some snail, and I'm going to get a little extra height by not putting it all the way up to the fold in the card. I'm going to give myself a little under 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to adhere also with snail the 2 front pieces together, and then I will put the pop-up little brackets behind these 2 pieces. Okay, so now I'm going to work on my pop-up mechanism. So I'm taking the scrap of Pool Party cardstock and I'm trimming off one end so it's perfectly straight. And then I'm going to do the scoring for all the brackets at one time. So I'm scoring at 1/4 inch, 3/4 of an inch, 1 inch, and then cutting 1/2 an inch beyond that. So the piece that I end up with is 1.5 inches wide. Then I'm going to turn that piece sideways and I'm going to cut 2 1/2 inch strips. So I'm going to end up with 2 brackets that are 1/2 an inch wide and are scored at 1/4 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and 1 inch. If you're making multiple cards or need a lot of brackets for your pop-up, this is the way I recommend you apply the adhesive. Apply it to the piece that you scored before you cut your individual brackets. No adhesive on that little 1/4 inch piece there, but adhesive all over the other panels. And you don't want adhesive on the little corners either. Since I already cut 2 brackets for this pop-up that I'm doing now, I'm going ahead and applying some tear tape to those 3 sections of each one of the brackets. Since the tear tape is too wide to do 2 strips side by side, I'm just going ahead and doing the 2 and then just trimming off the excess. I want to make sure that these are really well stuck down on all sides, so I'm trying to cover each little section with as much adhesive as possible. This is what it looks like when I've applied all the adhesive. You don't have to use double-sided adhesive. You could also use liquid glue and just apply the glue before you glue down each section, or you could use several glue dots. Now that my brackets are ready to go, I'm eyeballing where I need to place them, and I have peeled the backer from the 1/4 inch section, and I've just gone ahead and applied it close to the fold, but not right up to the fold. I'm leaving just a teeny tiny amount of space so that I don't create too much bulk right in the fold of the card. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one and then move on to the next section. Now I'm taking the adhesive backer off on the next section of the bracket, and this time I'm using my piercing tool to help me remove the backer. And I'm going to apply the 2 slope pieces that I stuck together to my 2 brackets. Now when I apply this, I'm going to also leave a little tiny gap, just like I did with the fold. I'm going to leave a tiny little gap on the bottom of the slope pieces. I want to make sure that when I close the card that this is not going to sort of drag up against the card base, so I'm leaving just a teeny tiny amount of space. And then to finish off the pop-up mechanism, I'm going to fold the brackets in half, remove the backer paper from the rest of the adhesive, and then I'm simply going to, making sure that the brackets are nice and flat with one hand, close the card front onto the back. This way, I'm ensuring that the card is going to close properly and that everything is lined up perfectly. And ta-da! Pop-up is done. I hope you can appreciate the dimension and the shadow that this creates. I'm going to show you another card that I did previously. That one has 2 layers of brackets. It's a good illustration of why you don't want to do your brackets necessarily in white and how much harder it is to hide the brackets in the skinnier parts of the pop-up. So that card is fairly bulky, so I decided to only do 1 layer of brackets on this card, and also because the 2 layers were taking up too much space where I wanted to write my sentiment. When I was admiring my lovely pop-up, I realized that I had gotten some smudges of ink on the inside of my card. I cannot figure out how. And I decided to stamp a few snowflakes to camouflage the smudges. Well, when I stamped the snowflakes, I made the situation even worse. So then what I decided was, instead of stamping the sentiment on the inside of the card, I would have to do something else to cover up the mess. I went ahead and covered the rest of the inside panel with some more snowflakes, and then I took my scrap of pool party cardstock and stamped the sentiment onto it. Then I cut that into a strip using my paper trimmer and put banner edges on the ends and glued that on to cover up the mess. In the end, I think this turned out a whole lot cuter than if I had just stamped the sentiment inside. To finish the card, I need to finish the front, so here's where I place that glue dot onto the twine on the back side of the vellum panel, and then I'm just applying snail onto the backs of the stitched ovals so that you won't be able to see it through the vellum, and then I'm just placing it on the card front. To embellish the front of the card, I'm using the white sequins that come in the Paper Pumpkin kit. I'm going to use 3 of them. And I'm going to use the glue dots that are also in the kit to attach them. There are 2 ways that you can do this. You can either apply the glue dot to the back of the sequin and peel off the backer and then glue it to your project, or you can place the glue dot directly onto your project and then just press the sequin on top of that. I prefer the second method. I like to put them on my project and then put my sequins on top. And the very last thing I'm going to do on my card is apply a coat of Wink of Stella, clear Wink of Stella, all over the images on the front, being careful to avoid the sentiment because, as you know, the Wink of Stella pen can pick up some of the ink and transfer it. So I'm cleaning my brush here after the Dapper Denim and then just kind of applying the Wink of Stella around the sentiment. With that, my card is complete. I hope that you will give a pop-up card a try, especially if you've never tried one before. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Happy crafting! If you would like to see more pictures or purchase any of the products used in this video, please visit my blog at mariascardsandmore.com. Thanks for watching!